I'm joined with producer Matt Simpson on the show. As always, we're going to be chatting a little bit about this.
Hello. I'm going to lean over to that camera there so you can see me.
Oh,
hi, everyone. And I sit back here because we have not positioned these cameras properly. Hello, hi, how are you?
This is producer talk. You're normally in the gallery looking at this stuff and he sits in here and he knows what's going on,
Yeah, we need to fix that. Yes, I'm very well. How are you?
Good, not too bad. Nearly at the end of the week, Matt. We're nearly at the week.
Yeah, it's Persona release day, though.
It is, yeah. And you're obviously, you can tell me more about Persona, because Persona is a game I've never played. So for you, this is a chance for you to sell it to me. So
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Persona and kind of like to kick us off.
So weirdly, I'm not really much of a JRPG fan.
Yeah.
So when they say that I love these games, people are like, that sounds weird. The reason why is Persona 5. Because Persona 5 was suggested to me by Midas, friend of Jinx. He basically said, look, even if you don't like JRPGs, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
And I did. And the reason why is because the story is incredible. So basically how it works is you're a high school student and you go to a school and then you discover that there's this second world. It's like the real world. Then there's this world full of personas, which is made out of the sort of cognitions of people's innermost desires.
Yeah.
And tends to be bad people who have these desires to want to do terrible things. And you can go in and you have these personas, which are like sort of Pokemon, so you can add like different attacks, different sort of effects, fire, ice, lightning, all the rest of it. And you have turn-based battles against these enemies, and you defeat the bosses, and you change their hearts, and everyone's happy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So Persona 5 came out, and it kind of blew everyone away, and it kind of took these kind of obscure JRPGs and brought them to the West in a way that we hadn't seen before.
Cool.
And also, like, if anyone knows that game, like, the music is incredible. Visually, it's spectacular. I don't think I've ever seen a menu. Even its menus are better than anything you've seen from anything else.
Really?
Like, every single thing has been designed, like, stylized out the butt, basically.
Yeah. Nice
But Persona 3 and 4, people were like, oh, I want to play some of the other games, but they weren't really accessible because Persona 4 that came out on Vita and then was ported to Steam, but now it's available on consoles. And Persona 3 was on PSP. Well, Persona 3 Portable was on PSP. So basically, there's not been that many ways of being able to get hold of these games in the last sort of 10 years. So finally, they're now here and they're on Xbox Game Pass, they're on PlayStation, they're on PC, they're on Switch. And finally, a lot of people are going to get to experience them.
Yeah, because these are the Persona 3 or 4 re-releases, right? So people have been calling out for this. Has there been quite a community that's kind of been like, we're ready to have these back now?
Yeah, I think so. Particularly, 3 and 4, because 4 basically similar to 3, but you're in like you're like a city boy who moves out to a countryside place, and there's a murder mystery event mystery kind of thing going on.
Yeah. And
you kind of go into this again. It's like a separate world, but you go through your TV because it was like 10 years ago, and that's like before the age of phones. I know back in the day when the mobile phones.
Back in the day.
You could go into your telly, and that was where everyone communicated through.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gameplay was very similar, and the story apparently is really good, although there's one or two questionable homophobic things, but that's something you have to sort of think about.
Yeah.
Persona 3, again, it's kind of a similar story, but there's this thing called the Dark Hour, which is basically the 25th hour of the day.
Okay.
So it starts between midnight. It starts at midnight, and it's an extra hour that no one knows about unless you happen to be a Persona user. Basically, it's quite a cool little concept of like, what if there was an extra hour in the day that only some people could exist in?
That's cool. I like that.
And there's like a giant tower, and it's that's more of like a roguelike where the tower is procedure generated.
Yeah.
And you go out, and as you have to sort of balance that with. So the other element of all Persona games is you're balancing these kind of combat with this life sim stuff, which is the kind of you're making friends and you're building up your relationships with people, and those have effects on your gameplay. So for example, if you level up one character through their story, they can help you out in gameplay in your party and stuff like that. So you have to use, or you can like you level up certain things in the game that allow you to do better attacks or use certain other moves you couldn't before, or swap party members out. So you have these sort of two diametric different things that are happening, and you're doing things on one side, doing things in the life sim, social sim stuff, affects how the gameplay works, which then affects how the life sim stuff works.
That's cool.
So it's a really clever kind of two-way thing. And so Persona 5 is a thing that everyone knows that from, but you'll get that with these two as well.
That's really cool. I mean, that's right up my street. I really like games that change the way you physically play it, because I think it makes it unique to the player, and I think that's something that's really special within gaming as well. Yeah. So with that said, is there an order that you can play these games, or can you kind of jump into any game at any time?
I mean, you can jump in at any time. They're all different stories.
Yeah.
They're all slightly different variations on the same kind of dual world concept.
Yeah.
And there's so many other things I can get into about each one, but we don't have time. I would personally always start with Persona 5 just because I think it's the one that's most accessible to the West.
Yeah.
I think it's the one that really sells the concept better than any other. With these two having come out, all those 3 games are on Game Pass. If you have Game Pass, go on Persona 5 Royal first, play that, then come play these. If you've played Persona 5 Royal and you're thinking about playing these, yes, start with Persona 4, not Persona 3. You'd think start with Persona 3, I wouldn't. I start with Persona 4, because that will be more familiar.
Okay.
Kind of as the games have evolved to what they are now, like you'll find some stuff is a bit more limited in Persona 4, and even more stuff is limited in Persona 3. So it's kind of like, weirdly, I'd say go backwards if you're thinking about playing these games. Start with 4.
Yeah.
I would suggest.
Because I think, like you were saying as well, with like obviously Persona 3 and stuff like that, how it's obviously quite an old game. So do you think it's aged well? Do you think like if we're going to play it now, it's going to, there's some things there we're going to be like, oh, not too sure.
Yeah, it's a bit mechanically stiff. Remember, it was a PSP and PS Vita games. So they will feel a bit clunky and a bit awkward. And as I said, there are some story elements that feel a bit dated, some misogyny, homophobia and stuff that just be aware of when you're going into it. It will be a bit gross. But I think the stories are timeless. That's the thing. There's some of the characters are still amazing to engage with. They're really well written. The worlds are really, really well realized.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, yes, there are elements that will feel a bit awkward and a bit clunky. Some of the music will feel a bit outdated.
Yeah.
It's like music from 2005 does not sound like you remember it sounding. Trust me. But no, I think. Yeah, ultimately, I would highly recommend anyone getting involved in these. They are long experiences as well. They're like 100 hours experiences. So you can dip in and out. That's why they're great on Switch. I'd recommend, because you can dip in and out, play a little bit, come back, that kind of thing.
Definitely, so. They sound addictive and it sounds right up my street. So I think you've sold it to me, Matt. I want to give it a play, but I'm going to start with 5. I'm going to go backwards.
Go play 5 Roll. It is incredible.
Do that. So there you go. If you've never played it before, start on 5, work your way backwards.